Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg grilled inside a courtroom in downtown LA yesterday. This is the first time he's been questioned in front of a jury and families about the mental health impacts of social media on children. Zuckerberg pushed back under oath on claims that internal emails showed the company knew kids under 13 were using its apps and that it prioritized keeping young people engaged to increase profits. But parents close to the issue say the evidence shows the real story.
We were here in Santa Monica when he passed away in 2010 from the choking game.
One of the richest and most powerful men in the world had to stand before a fair and impartial jury and answer questions under oath as to why his profits were more important than Selena's life.
In a statement to CBS News, Meta says it strongly disagrees with the allegation, citing its, quote, commitment to supporting young people with built-in protections.
Well, the landmark trial continues today with testimony from a number of former Meta employees, some of whom have been described as whistleblowers. Attorney and legal analyst Rachel Fasay joins us this morning. Welcome, Rachel.
Good morning.
Rachel, yesterday Zuckerberg said on the stand in response to the claims that people turn to social media because it provides what he says is interaction and vital information. What stood out to you most in his testimony?
I think that it stood out that he was a bit combative, that he was trying to discount some internal emails, which of course he was. That he kept saying that the lawyers were mischaracterizing what was going on at Meta at the time that they were researching and determining what a measure of success was on Instagram. And I think that he may have not come off as trustworthy to the jury as that he may have needed to. But those issues stood out. He was talking about the First Amendment protections of the beauty filters that teens like. But there was also some really damning evidence. And if you want to have teens on social media, you need to have tweens. So it was a bit contradictory, and he didn't have a great way of kind of telling the entire story such that it made sense that they would not have known there were harmful effects.
How do you think that's going to play? I mean, I would think that, you know, Mark Zuckerberg was one of the most powerful people within the company. For him to kind of not make things clear and didn't seem to take much responsibility for the concerns raised in the courtroom. How do you think that this plays out in front of a jury?
I think he's a big witness. He's one of the world's richest men. It's very hard not to know of the founder of Facebook and Meta. He has such a large presence that it's going to be hard to kind of rehab any kind of credibility loss that he had with the jury or any bit of accountability that he was shirking, if you will. What it is going to come down to, though, is whether the jury really believes that it is social media's issue that causes the mental health issues, or if that is not a real science and there are other issues at play that are more important to a teen's mental health.
Yeah. Rachel, Mark Zuckerberg, of course, is one of the most recognizable names and faces out there. So how significant do you believe is his testimony in this overall case?
Well, I think it's incredibly significant. That was the biggest day that we will have in court. There's no bigger witness to come in, including the plaintiff herself, other than Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, the jury was treated to something that they would normally never see. So it's just like any celebrity testimony. It's a really big deal. Now, how he rubs people is going to be quite questionable. And if it was the wrong way, again, the defense is going to have to put up witnesses that support what he was saying, but perhaps do it in a way that's more palatable to the jury.
Rachel, really quickly, because we're running out of time, I am curious, though, there was a discussion we had even in the newsroom yesterday. Is this case about, did they know that it was addictive and they have to prove that it was addictive? Or could the jury look at parents and go, why are 9-year-olds able to get on this app and you don't know that that's there? Does that not matter once this case plays out?
Oh, no, it's both. So there's design defects. We're going to hear from a lot of experts as it relates to the actual addictive nature of the algorithm, the actual technology. That's going to be one part. And the second part is exactly what you said. It's the knowledge of whether they should have predicted that kids that were too young were getting on the app, which it's very hard for them to deny that they knew that and what they were doing to protect those children if they knew there were addiction or harmful effects relating to them being on the app. It's really twofold. It's two parts to this trial.
I appreciate you boiling that down for us. Thank you so much, Rachel. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.